At the very beginning, we are introduced to a father named Francis. He is a wealthy businessman and one of the billionaires living in Monaco. Francis has 3 teenage children, Philippe, Stella, and Alexander. Unfortunately, none of them have behavior he can be proud of. Their daily lives revolve around having fun, partying, and spending their father's money. Francis himself is completely unaware of how bad things really are because his entire life is consumed by work. One day, while Francis is in a discussion with his personal assistant, Ferruccio, Felipe suddenly shows up with what he claims is a big idea to expand the family business through shoes. He talks at length, but in the end, Francis only trusts him with a simple task: delivering documents to a business partner. As the eldest child, Felipe is expected to eventually take over the company, yet even this small responsibility is treated casually. On the way home from work, Ferruccio finally opens up about the children's behavior. Felipe works only when he feels like it. Alexander spends his time chasing women, and Stella constantly burns money on shopping sprees. Stella often throws wild parties at home and openly looks down on Matthias, her childhood friend who happens to be the nephew of Francis's housekeeper. Ferruccio firmly believes that if Francis keeps spoiling his children, the company will collapse after his death, and their future will be in serious trouble. This is where everything starts to go wrong. This is Spoiled Brats.
Et ne se refuse rien.
That same night, Stella hosts an extravagant birthday party at the house. Her boyfriend Carlos causes a scene by deliberately opening an extremely expensive bottle of wine using a golf ball. When Francis becomes visibly upset, Stella brings Carlos into her father's study. Instead of apologizing, the two of them announce their plans to get married. Francis asks Carlos about his job, only to learn that he is unemployed. Even worse, Carlos confidently talks about a luxury yacht honeymoon, funded not by his own money but by Stella's inheritance from her late mother. Hearing this, Francis is furious and immediately rejects their request. Blinded by love, Stella refuses to back down and insists on marrying Carlos, even without her father's blessing. As if things were not bad enough, Francis soon receives more terrible news. Felipe, who was supposed to personally deliver important documents, paid someone else to do it, while he himself was partying on a rented private jet. The problems continue to pile up. This time, Alexander's college professor shows up in a rage. He accuses Alexander of sleeping with his wife, and even with his 2 daughters. All of these scandals hit Francis at once. Already old and overwhelmed, he collapses after suffering a heart attack. Thankfully, the doctor later explains that it was only a mild one, but Francis is ordered to take complete rest so he can recover. Instead of letting their father rest in peace, the 3 children argue over pointless matters and blame one another. Their behavior pushes Ferruccio over the edge, and in anger, he throws them all out. 2 months later, Felipe, Alexander, and Stella suddenly panic when they realize their financial access and credit cards have all been blocked. As if that is not enough, the police arrive at the house to search the place and seize every asset they can find. In the middle of the chaos, Francis suddenly appears and immediately tells his children to run. They escape by hijacking a car and fleeing the scene. While on the road, Francis explains what is really going on. His company is in serious trouble because Ferruccio is suspected of stealing investors' money and disappearing. As a result, all company accounts and assets have been frozen, including Francis's personal property. Worse still, even though he is now bankrupt, Francis is being hunted by the police and could face prison. Hearing that their father has lost everything leaves the children in complete shock. Francis tries to calm them, explaining that all they can do now is hide and wait for things to settle down. To avoid being tracked, he takes all their phones and throws them away. Francis then brings his children to the outskirts of the city, to the old house that once belonged to his late parents. The place is run down and messy, and they are forced to live there without modern comforts, without servants, without luxury, and without any money at all. With everyone already starving, Francis makes it clear that the next day, the 3 of them must find jobs to earn money. The following morning, Francis wakes his children early and sends them out to look for work, while he stays behind at the house. He explains that he is not only a fugitive, but also too old, and that it is time for his children to start providing for him. Reluctantly, Stella, Philippe, and Alexander split up and head out to search for jobs. Philippe visits a friend to ask for work and even tries to borrow some money. Instead of helping, the friend, who is also from a wealthy family, mocks and humiliates him.
Ok, d'accord, dans toutes les séances de travail, tout ça, c'était pour...
Enfin merde, Filou! Toi comme moi, on sait que c'est...
Mais va mettre ta petite balle dans ton petit trou.
Meanwhile, Stella borrows someone else's phone to contact Carlos. She lies about her situation so he will not find out about the bankruptcy, claiming that she is simply on vacation with her family. Alexander turns out to be even worse than the others. Rather than looking for a job, he steals food from construction workers. Francis is deeply disappointed when Philippe and Alexander return home empty-handed. As he is scolding them, Stella suddenly shows up carrying bags of expensive shopping. Completely unaware of how serious things are, she bought those items using money from selling Felipe's luxury watch. Felipe immediately explodes in anger, furious that Stella wasted the money on useless things instead of buying food. In the middle of their argument, Francis's housekeeper, Margaret, arrives with Matthias after being contacted by Stella. Margaret brings clothes and daily necessities and offers to let them stay at her home for a while. Francis refuses the offer, insisting that they can handle this situation on their own. Before leaving, Matthias gives Stella the address of the restaurant where he works, offering her a chance at a job. The next day, Stella and Felipe head out again to look for work. Stella finally goes to the restaurant to accept Matthias's offer. The job turns out to be far from glamorous. She works as a server, taking care of guests, cleaning the restaurant, and washing piles of dishes. Philippe, on the other hand, visits a job center. When asked about his qualifications and the kind of job he wants, he confidently says he expects a position with a vehicle provided and complete freedom over his working hours. After searching for a match, the receptionist finds a job that surprisingly fits his demands. Philippe becomes a rickshaw driver. Elsewhere, it turns out Ferruccio never disappeared at all. He meets Francis and brings him a luxurious meal, a plate of fresh lobster. This reveals the truth behind everything that has happened. Francis's bankruptcy is actually a carefully planned act, created together with Ferruccio to teach his children a lesson. Francis hopes this experience will make them more responsible, push them to work hard, and help them understand the true value of money. While the two of them are talking, noise comes from inside the house. It is Alexander, who never went out to look for a job. As Francis is about to clean up the dishes, Alexander notices the lobster and becomes curious about where it came from. Francis casually claims he caught it himself while fishing at sea. Without questioning it, Alexander is moved by the idea of this new, free lifestyle and quickly believes it, even wanting to try the same thing. After finishing work, Stella and Philippe immediately hand over their earnings to Francis, who manages the money for food and small repairs to the house. When mealtime arrives, Alexander, who refuses to work, is punished by being denied food. Left with no choice, he wanders into the forest, searching for anything he can eat. The following day, with Alexander still being the only one who refuses to work, Francis finally forces him to help repair the house. He makes it clear that if Alexander refuses, he will not receive food again. Francis then shares his own past. Before becoming a successful property developer, he was once just a construction worker. Having experienced both hardship and success, Francis hopes Alexander can follow the same path, working hard and relying on real skills to survive. Meanwhile, both Stella and Philippe start to feel just how hard working life really is. When Philippe is about to pick up a passenger, another rickshaw driver named Malik cuts in and takes the customer first. Philippe is left with nothing. Stella's situation is even worse. She gets yelled at by an angry customer because the kitchen forgot to add vegetables to the order. Crushed by the humiliation, Stella brings the dish back to the kitchen and feels completely defeated. The harsh words make her feel deeply belittled, and she begins to think that being a server is not something she can handle. At this moment, Matthias helps her see things differently. He explains that the customer's behavior is very similar to how Stella herself used to act back when she was rich. Without realizing it, she often hurt other people's feelings. Matthias hopes that this experience will teach her the meaning of life and the importance of mutual respect. The other servers stay because they need the money, just like Stella does now. After hearing this, Stella decides to return to work. To lift her spirits, Matthias and the kitchen staff even try to cheer her up by playing a crude prank on the rude customer's meal. One day, while Philippe is pulling his rickshaw, he approaches Malik, who is hanging out with his friends. At first, Philippe intends to settle the score for what happened earlier. But when Malik accidentally spills a drink onto Philippe's shoes, he suddenly realizes that those shoes are the same expensive pair he once sold for a very high price. What started as hostility quickly turns into friendship. Malik then shares that he owns a large collection of limited edition sports shoes stored in a warehouse, which immediately catches Philippe's interest. After seeing the collection for himself, Philippe finally gets an idea. He invites Malik to start a shoe business together, making their own shoes by copying rare designs and selling them on the market. Day by day, all of them slowly adjust to their new lives. They begin to understand the value of hard work. Complaints disappear. Money is no longer wasted. Selfishness fades away. Felipe and Stella even start to enjoy their jobs. The family bond, once strained, grows stronger as they learn to understand and respect one another. However, without Francis realizing it, this happy period is about to end. Carlos suddenly shows up at the house. He reveals that he knows Francis only pretended to be bankrupt to teach his children a lesson. Carlos even threatens that if the truth comes out, the children will be furious with their father. Francis is left confused and unable to deny it, truly afraid that Carlos will expose everything. In the middle of this tense situation, Francis's 3 children appear. Carlos immediately takes advantage of the moment, acting like a hero by claiming that he has fixed the company's problems and returned all the investors' money that Ferruccio supposedly ran off with. After hearing that all of Francis's assets have been restored, Stella, Philippe, and Alexander happily rush back to their luxurious home. Francis, however, is left behind, quietly filled with sadness. The next morning, while Francis is having breakfast, Margaret brings up the truth. She knows about the entire act and gently suggests that Francis should be honest with his children as soon as possible. Hearing the truth from someone else would only hurt them more. After giving it some thought, Francis decides it is time to gather his children and finally come clean. However, when he tries to contact Stella, the call is answered by Carlos instead. He explains that Stella cannot be disturbed because they are handling important matters at City Hall. Francis immediately panics. He already knows that Carlos plans to marry Stella purely to gain control over her wealth. Determined to stop the wedding, Francis quickly takes Philippe and Alexander and rushes to City Hall. He arrives just in time and manages to prevent the marriage. Francis then reveals the truth about Carlos, explaining that he never spent a single cent helping the family and only targeted Stella for her inheritance. He also exposes the threats Carlos made behind the scenes. Once Stella understands who Carlos really is, she ends the relationship on the spot. At that moment, Francis finally tells the whole truth. He admits that the company's bankruptcy, the police raids, and even his status as a fugitive were all part of an elaborate plan. He did it to stop his children from being spoiled, to help them grow up, and to teach them responsibility. All Francis ever wanted was for his children to have better lives after he is gone. But no matter how sincere his intentions were, the lie still cuts deep. Feeling betrayed, all 3 children decide to leave home, leaving Francis behind on his own. Time passes quietly and 9 months go by without his children by his side. Even though they send him money every month, Francis remains sad and deeply lonely in his old age. Unable to watch his friends suffer, Ferruccio eventually brings Francis back to the old house where the lesson first began. There, Francis sees the result of everything he did. His children have become independent. Alexander now runs a small home renovation business. Philippe and Malik are successfully selling shoes they make themselves. Stella, once spoiled and careless, is now comfortable and happy, working at the restaurant alongside Matthias. Ferruccio tells Francis to grab some flowers from the car and go see them. When Francis arrives and wishes Stella a happy birthday, the room suddenly falls silent. Believing his presence has ruined the moment, Francis quietly turns around and leaves. Unexpectedly, as he walks away holding back his sadness, Stella, Philippe, and Alexander call out to him. They ask him to come back inside and celebrate the birthday together. That moment becomes the happiest day of Francis's life. He finally realizes that he has succeeded in teaching his children the most valuable lesson of all, the lesson of life. So the moral of the story is that a parent can give everything, sacrifice everything, and even break their own heart just to save their children, yet still end up alone, hoping one day their love will finally be understood.